The smart lights in the living room flickered once before turning a deep blood red, and the electronic deadbolt on the front door clicked shut with the finality of a prison cell. Lindy Mercer stood frozen as her own house began to breathe with a mechanical malice. The speakers in the walls didn't play music, but rather a distorted, mocking laugh that she hadn't heard in years. On the kitchen island, her phone vibrated violently, the screen displaying a series of private, fabricated messages that were being broadcast to every student and parent in the city at that very second. Through the window, the red brake lights of a black sedan glowed like predatory eyes from the curb, idling in the shadows of the Asheville dusk. Lindy reached for the light switch, but the plastic toggle snapped under her touch as the temperature in the room began to drop. Controlled by a hand miles away, her son's terrified sob echoed from the hallway. But when she tried to run to him, the digital display on the oven scrolled a single, chilling sentence. "I can see you, Lindy, but you'll never see me." The doorbell shattered the quiet like a stone through glass. Lindy's fingers tightened around the teacup, knuckles whitening before she set it down with deliberate care. The porcelain clinked against the saucer, too loud, too sharp. Leo didn't lift his head from the Lego fortress, but his shoulders hunched, fingers pausing mid-click. She crossed the room in 3 strides, the wool of her socks muffling her steps. Through the peephole, a distorted face wavered. Sharp cheekbones, a smudge of dirt on the temple. The woman on the porch shifted her weight, arms wrapped around a cardboard box. A gust of wind carried the scent of rain and something sour, like spoiled milk. Lindy exhaled through her nose, then turned the deadbolt. The hinge creaked as she pulled the door open just enough to block the threshold with her body. "You're not supposed to be here," she said, voice low. The woman's lips twitched. "Yeah, well, neither are you, technically." She jerked her chin toward the box. "His stuff. Thought you'd want it before the landlord tosses it." A plastic dinosaur peeked over the rim, its paint chipped. Lindy's throat went dry. She reached out, but the woman didn't let go. "He asked about you," she said. "Last week. Said you'd know what to do with this." The box sagged between them, the weight of it pressing into Lindy's palms. Behind her, Leo's construction froze. The ticking of the clock stretched, each second a hammer blow. She wanted to slam the door, wanted to scream. Instead, she stepped back, letting the woman shove the box into her arms. "Thanks," Lindy said, and the word tasted like ash. She closed the door and leaned against the wood, the cardboard rough against her forearms. The silence of the house returned, but it felt brittle now, a thin layer of ice over a dark lake. She looked down at the box. Nate's things. The man who had vanished years ago, leaving behind a trail of debt and a hollow space in their lives that Lindy had spent every waking hour trying to fill with books, order, and the quiet rhythm of Asheville life. She forced herself to breathe, the scent of dust and old paper rising from the box. This was her fortress. She had built it page by page, shelf by shelf. Lindy smoothed her hand over the cool, light oak of the kitchen island, a small ritual to ground herself. The surface was pristine. She had wiped it twice that morning, ensuring not a single grain of dust remained. In the living room, the grandfather clock maintained its steady, comforting pulse, a heartbeat for a home that finally felt safe. She watched Leo on the rug. He was a spindly collection of limbs and concentration, his dark red hair falling over his glasses as he snapped a translucent blue brick into place. The click was perfect. Everything was in its place. Lindy adjusted the soft wool throw on her armchair and took a sip of her tea. The cinnamon warmed her throat, a liquid shield against the memory of the woman at the door. For months, life had been a series of predictable, beautiful moments. She closed her eyes, letting the steam dampen her eyelashes, savoring the stillness. This was the life she had earned by surviving him. A sudden shift in the light pulled her eyes open. She stood, intending to draw the heavy velvet curtains against the encroaching North Carolina dusk. But the fabric caught in her hand. Across the street, beneath the jaundiced glow of a street lamp, a black sedan sat idling. It was parked at a slight, aggressive angle, the front tire biting into the curb. Her heart didn't just beat. It lunged against her ribs like a trapped bird. She knew that silhouette. She knew the way the tinted glass swallowed the light, making the car look like a hole cut out of the world. Nate always parked like that, impatient, entitled, occupying space that didn't belong to him. Her fingers cramped around the curtain. The sedan's brake lights flared, two crimson eyes staring back at her through the gloom. A cold sweat broke across her brow, turning the collar of her sweater damp and itchy. She retreated into the shadows of the foyer, the warmth of the tea curdling in her stomach. The fortress hadn't been breached yet, but the enemy was at the gates, silent and watching. "Mom?" Leo's voice was a jagged shard. He stood in the kitchen doorway, his smartphone clutched so tightly his knuckles were white. The color had drained from his face, leaving his skin the color of damp newsprint. His lips moved, but no sound came out at first. Just a frantic, rhythmic twitch. Lindy stepped forward, her own fear momentarily eclipsed by the raw terror in her son's eyes. She took the phone from his shaking hand. The screen was a battlefield. It was the school's main group chat, a digital space normally reserved for homework complaints and memes. Now it was a sewer. Filthy, distorted sentences, words Leo would never use, were being spat out under his profile name. Below the text, images began to populate. They were horrific, uncanny valley versions of Leo and several girls from his class, generated with a cruel, surgical precision. The AI had captured the slant of Leo's eyes, the specific curve of his jaw, and placed them into intimate, depraved scenarios. Lindy watched, paralyzed, as likes and laughing emojis flooded the bottom of the screen. The comments were a blur of WTF Leo and sicko. Leo covered his face with his hands, his narrow shoulders heaving with the weight of a humiliation he couldn't possibly understand. The Yadavito cine light of the display reflected in the tears leaking through his fingers. Lindy felt a wave of nausea. This wasn't just a prank. It was a digital desecration. "I didn't do it,"